Hi everyone. Today we got basically a sideways choppy day. We're going to do a real quick video today because we didn't get a ton of movement, but you can see sideways consolidation, closed on the low. You don't love to see it. Tested some of those resistance levels and then rejected from there. So really the same thesis as we saw yesterday, but let's take a quick look at some of the other charts and see if we can find some direction for tomorrow. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, you got Elon Musk coming out and saying that Tesla is going to be the beneficiary of these auto tariffs. Detroit is going to suffer. Tesla makes a lot of their vehicles in-house in the United States. You can see not all cars are made in the United States, and they're going to be hit with that 25% tariff next week. And these car manufacturers are already starting to be hit with new valuations based on this. But you can see Tesla, he's calling it clear winner, better insulated from risk when it comes to these kinds of tariffs. And you have some analysts coming out and saying Tesla should be good. Rivian also could fare a little bit better with 100% of their production being in the United States. And you can see they had a 7% pop there. So Tesla had some spikes. They should be one of the beneficiaries of this, which is the point, right? You want to benefit these US companies, benefit US manufacturing with these tariffs. And that is what we're seeing so far. Moving over to fear and greed, we're at a 28 yesterday. That makes sense. We didn't get a ton of movement. You can see flat here on the day. Major indicators still not moving, still extreme fear pretty much across all of them. Volatility hovered right at the resistance there. 18.6 is that level. Safe haven demand turning down just a little bit. Junk bonds still hovering in extreme greed. So very little movement here for fear and greed today. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see GDP numbers were actually pretty good here. 2.4 versus 2.3. So GDP was good. PCE prices actually a little bit lower than expectations there as well. Initial jobless claims also better than expectations. So the data across the board was pretty good. 7-year note auction was a little bit higher than the previous. That's not so great. And even the Fed balance sheet sold off quite a bit, which was not so great either. But overall, the data was solid and markets still sold off. So that's interesting. And then looking at tomorrow, you have that PCE data first thing, Michigan data, consumer sentiment, as well as Atlanta Fed GDP for Q1. So quite a bit of data still left here for the Friday. I don't think it's going to be a ton of movement, but this is going to give us a forecast of where that inflation data is going to be here for next month. Moving over to the charts, you can see we got that doji candle. We're in the same trading range. We wicked both directions and then finished right in the middle of it, right on that 8 EMA. You can see 565.16 was support. If you bought that, you were in good shape. Found some support there. If you sold the highs there at 569.90 and the gap fill, you made money there as well. So doji candle makes sense. Consolidation day. Hopefully you kind of caught that a little bit early in the session. Sold the highs, bought the lows, and then closed going into the end of the session. At least that's what I did. 200 still sitting there as support, but it could absolutely cut through there. It doesn't look super great after hours. Momentum, basically nothing here on the hourly. Daily momentum stepping down. RSI bearish, volume bearish. So it is a consolidation candle. It is a hesitation candle, but we had a big sell yesterday. Hesitation candle pull back in time. I would expect a continuation lower tomorrow. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, you can see that continuation lower. That second lowest ATR band was your support, 565.80. So far that's holding. If that breaks, then you're looking for 563 as your next support. Usually once you hit those lower bands, you do start to see some support come in on the 4-hour chart. Even in this really accelerated downtrend that we saw, every time we hit that lowest band, we did see little pops, little bounces, and it slowed in the selling. So we'll see. Right now that gives you about $3 of potential downside to that lowest ATR band. And then we'll see if it's going to be a continuation lower. Right now you're still in bearish conditions, so we would be looking for a little bit more selling. Moving over to the Qs, a little bit worse here actually. You can see down about 0.5%, not good at all. Didn't quite wick that 486.84 level, sold off from there, touched the 21, sold off from there, gapped below both the 9 and 21 EMAs, closed below my level 581.94 at the end of the session. You can see just right there at the end it closed below it and then continued to sell to the 200. So is the 200 going to be support? You can see on that first candle of the day we threw a huge wick to it at 480.25, bounced from that level. After hours we're touching it again. Momentum basically nothing. RSI a little bit bearish. Momentum on the daily chart a little bit bearish, right? So we're expecting a little bit more sells. Your support now is 477.69 and the trend line in here. Is this zone going to hold? We have to wait to see for the touch. Again, I'm expecting a little bit more selling to that area. Moving over to the Qs on on the Tasty charts here, you can see that continued selling, lowest ATR band there, 479.03, so a little bit higher than the level that we talked about. My guess is that you would overthrow it, touch that lowest support area, and then find a little bit of support into the close, but not a ton of volume, momentum bearish. I would expect this to continue to sell. And if we start to sell through these levels here around 468, 467, somewhere in here, and we start to get those lower lows, then we're probably going to see this accelerate quite a bit. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see the Russell was down about 0.5% or $1 there, and then you can see the Dow was down about 1/3%, still looking pretty weak, testing those 21 and 9 EMAs. You can see momentum stepping to bearish on both of these RSIs. We're going to see if those SMAs support. Right now we have not touched them yet, so we're waiting to see a little bit more selling. We did get some gap fill. You can see the IWM filling the gap back to that Friday last week after the huge gap up on the Monday, touched that level, and then kind of bounced a little bit from there. Your support is still down at 201.88 now that we've closed below that 205 level, so waiting to see if we follow through to that lowest low. Right now I would expect it to, and then looking at the Dow, your support is still 418.38 after we closed below that 426.20 yesterday. Moving over to the Mag 7, you can see the Mag 7 was down about 0.5%. Below the trend line, same there. 9 EMA is still support at 428.14. Support is 273.41. Still the same support there. 9 EMA might be support, but my level is usually what I work off of there. So waiting to see if we follow through to that lowest area. Still could get a higher low setup off of this consolidation, but again, expecting at least a test of the 9, if not a push towards that 273.41 area. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple actually was positive on the day, but still could not get above that 224.36 level. So that's still resistance. 21 EMA still in there. 224.57 overhead resistance continues to hold there. So relative outperformance, you like to see it. Nice little 1% up when everything else was down. Momentum slightly bullish. RSI still slightly bullish. Want to see it get above the level and hold and push to that next 230.28 level. And then you got Microsoft coming down to that 388.03 level. That was the support. And so far that has held as support. So you got the test mid-session, got the bounce, closed up a couple of cents. So if you took the trade there, you're in good shape for now, up probably $2, $2.50 potentially. I would still keep a tight stop, and your take profit here would still be 394.22. Watch this level. If you do get the breakout, there's potential for that 55 EMA. So you can be cautious, kind of a little bit optimistic here as long as this support continues to hold. Obviously, if that support breaks down, then you should be out of the trade because this could potentially go down to that 378.77 level. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla was up about $1, about 1/3%. You can see a huge wick higher, got above the highs from Tuesday and then gave it all back to close back below that 280.06 level. So that might have been a little bit frustrating. Couldn't hold those gains. Momentum is still bullish, but seems to be fading here at resistance. Are we going to get a turn back down to this kind of 232 area? Potentially. These levels are really tight in here. This is more of a zone. So right now the zone is support. As long as the support holds, you're in good shape. Want to see that 21 EMA hold. If we do get a little bit of a pullback into this area, that would be 258.29 right now. Want to see that zone hold. You can see volume coming through, continuing to kind of drive this in a bullish direction, in my opinion. And then looking at NVIDIA, gap down and Doji down 2% or $2.33. I think this is probably going to go a little bit lower down to that 106.6 area. You got some trend support in there as well at 108 or so. This is where I think we're going, at least a double bottom, potentially a lower high. We talked about this yesterday, high, lower high. If you get the low, lower low, I would be looking for that 95.74 area. Moving over to Alphabet and Broadcom, both of these cratered, not great at all here. Alphabet down 1.8% and then Broadcom down 4% on the day. Huge underperformance from them, cut right through that 175.74 level. So you got a potential short trade there, looking for a retest of this 158 area. You can see that takes you all the way back to November of last year. Touched that level briefly and then had a huge pop from there. At this point, it looks like we're going to see a round trip of that move into the zone. You had a consolidation breakdown, cut through these lows here today, and now it looks like we're going to go to that lowest area. So big underperformance from both of these. It was a down day, but these were down much more than the others. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, look at staples continuing to be an absolute rocket ship, 1.14%, gapped through this level, rallied all the way to the next one at 80.54, cut through that level all the way to the 21. Your next resistance is going to be 81.18, but at this point I would probably be looking for this trend line here, somewhere in that 81.61 area. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. Clear higher low setup, look for that higher high potentially in the trend up here around 85.61. Staples looks really strong, and I like to see what we got here, so that's good. And then looking at discretionaries, basically unchanged, up 13 cents, hit the 21 EMA, momentum slightly bullish, resistance is still that 203.98 level, support is still 253 cents. Moving over to breadth has not moved all week, continues to stay really stable in this range, even with the selling that we're getting here today. So part of me still thinks we're going to see a higher low setup off of that consolidation base because market breadth really has not been selling over the last 2 days with the price action. You can see we did get a slight step down here on 20-day breadth, still above the level 51.75. 50-day breadth not so much, holding the level back below at 39.56, but still in the same trading range we've been in since 19 March. So we're in the same zone, really no changes here on breadth. And if breadth continues to stay stable, we should see that higher low setup. Moving over to the dollar did end up going down a little bit on the day, getting back below that 104.4 level. So we had the big push yesterday, today gave it all back. So we're back to neutral, arguably a little bit bearish, with 104.4 being your resistance. Really choppy on that level. You can see the test finally here to open the session from the 8 to the 9 o'clock candle. 21 EMA was resistance, and then we sold pretty straight down from there. And then so far here for the Friday candle, still holding right at that 21 EMA on the daily as resistance at 104.29. So I would call this neutral at this point. You got a low, potentially higher low here, but you also have a high, obviously much lower high, and a resistance area. Could go either direction. Need to see it get above 104.4 if it's going to go. Otherwise, 21 EMA is probably the resistance, and then you'd be looking for 103.6, potentially as low as 102.9. Moving over to bonds. Bonds continue to sell off a little bit here. J&K down 18 cents, nothing crazy, still in the same range that it's been in. Want to see that continue to hold. As long as 94.82 holds, that's good shape. So for now, we're still good. And then TLT, this is getting into a zone where it gets a lot more interesting, a lot more of a buying opportunity in here below the 89.16 area. Momentum is still bearish, RSI is still bearish. Maybe we do get a little bit more selling here. Still not expecting this to go anywhere near or below that 85.90 area. Realistically, I think we'll probably go to 87 at this point, but could see a gap down, gap up. That would be interesting. Either way, between 85.9 and this 89, one area I do like this as a buying opportunity for the medium to long term. Moving over to the VIX. The VIX continues to accelerate here to the upside. Momentum swinging to bullish, RSI swinging towards that SMA. Is the SMA going to be resistance? We don't know quite yet, but for now, there's room to the upside. I think we're probably going to go to that 21 area. We got above the 18.5 level, got above that 55 EMA. And either way, I think we're going to get at least 1 to 2 more days into this zone, and then we'll probably get a rejection from there and a lower high setup, which fits with the higher low setup on equities. Moving over to my accounts, I managed to make a few dollars on the day. You can see I did lose a little bit in my IRA. We were chopping on that 205 level. I thought we might end up holding it, but we didn't. So I got stopped out on that position. Didn't lose a whole lot, but a little on the Russell, and then you can see the Qs. I was buying that level for a while, made a couple of trades in there, kind of a lot of trades, honestly, 9 trades there, but either way, managed to make a little bit of money on a day where the Qs were down. So pretty good there, and you can see even the Russell was down almost $1, and I still only lost about $42 there. So could have been a $100 loss, wasn't that bad. Still positive on the day and still positive on the year. Again, I'm expecting a little bit more selling, so I don't have any positions on here. Could absolutely go either direction, but I would have a bias towards selling. Not super confident in that, but because it is a selling bias, I don't have anything on. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of the vehicle tariffs. Is Tesla going to be one of the winners here? Are we going to see more onshoring of manufacturing across the board? Can Ford and GM compete? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.